Composing Gloves here, and today we're taking a look at Bad Tape. It is a tape emulation plugin that does all sorts of emulation, including the bad stuff, apparently. Bad Tape is on the main arpeggiation at the very beginning. You'll hear it especially get kind of phasery as we transition, and it is also on the main bass line during the drop. So listen for those sounds. Those are the ones with the bad tape on it. Here we go. So still a work in progress, definitely going to maybe rebalance the middle a little bit spectrum wise, but it is coming along nicely. Got some nice groove going on in there. So let's get into the bad tape stuff. All right, so jumping into the track here, we have an arpeggiation here right at the very beginning that's got a bad tape on it. Let me play it for you with bad tape on it. Beautiful, right? Good arpeggiation. Now let's go ahead, let's take it off. So this could be really cool, especially there's a volume boost here, so it's not a totally fair comparison, but definitely I'm using bad tape to tone it back a bit spectrum wise. So what I've got here is I've got the saturation on. Saturation isn't super important in this case. What's really doing the magic here is a little bit of the wow and the color. So I am providing a cut. I was just mixing a little bit and I decided to apply it here instead of on the fader, because I was mixing effects around a bunch and like changing them in the rank. So it just happened to land, and that's where I made the decision. Now there is a wow filter. What this does is cause pitch variation. If I get rid of it and turn it bad tape back on, we lose all that phasiness that we had going into it. And that's actually what the wow filter is bringing to the table. You can type in values, by the way. So it's just bringing that phasiness into it. Now, I guess I'll cover the other controls on here because they're not complicated. Hiss makes hissing noise. Squeal or whatever, makes squeal noise. And harmonics adds harmonics to the sound the way tape would distort. And so if you were to push the tape hard. So if you're looking for some nice tape distortion kind of stuff, there it is. Then we also have detune, which detune will slow down the audio like a tape stop. And then when you let go, it'll try and speed back up to get back to where it was. Let me show you. It's kind of a fun one. Now I have it mixed right here, especially right here, which is why part of it still went through and didn't get affected. But that's a fun thing to mess with. Now we have input, mix, output. Those are all self-explanatory. Wet, dry, turn it up before you go in, turn it up or down before you go out. I mean, those ones shouldn't need to explain. We have the color, which is what I'm using here. So what color does is it's just, I picture it basically like an EQ move. And when you go to the negative side, it tends to sound darker. Go to the positive side, tends to sound brighter. If we go to the other side, let's just hear it. I didn't like that for my particular application, so I decided to take it down. Yeah, then we also have saturation. This is a type of distortion, not incredibly important in this sound, much more important in the bass case, so I'm going to sort of save it for there. And then we also have speed. Speed changes how the pitch warbliness stuff happens, and that has to do with shake. So let me bring shake up. This is what shake does. And if we bring the speed up, it makes it go faster. Bring it down, a lot slower. So if you really want that pitchy kind of stuff, you can do it. I settled for just not using shake in this case. And wow, I believe this affects wow. I actually haven't tried it. This is pretty subtle too. Let's bring it up. Oh, yep. Definitely affects wow. So got to use the magic number 19. So keep that in mind when you're using the speed. I'm going to leave it at 0. Slower will typically just be more transparent because the pitch variation will be over a longer amount of time. That's just going to be less obvious. So that's what I'm using Bad Tape for in the first case. Let's go ahead, come over to the drop and work in progress drop. All right, so I've isolated the bass sound by itself. So here is what it sounds like, just the Bad Tape, the one bass sound. I do have another line in this track. It's actually the Rickenbacker bass. It comes with complete, so you may have it. And it sounds like this when layered. So if you're like, hey, it sounds like you have more stuff. I do have more stuff, but just so you know, that's there in the background acting as a layer. Over here, it actually plays some additional notes for rhythmic purposes. So here we have the Bad Tape, and you'll notice I have the wow up. And you might be going, that's a bit strange to do to a bass sound. And you'd be right, it is a strange thing to do. Let me take it off and show you what we had before. So still a pretty cool thing, very bright. So I'm going to go ahead and turn this back on. And the color and saturation help us dramatically with that. Again, we have a very high mix because I mostly want what Bad Tape has to offer. Just a smidge of it to come out that's still clean. But you notice it darkens up quite nicely, actually. If you take saturation off, though, it's a lot softer. Now, the softer is because the saturation also provides a volume boost, which is why I also have a cut as well, sort of a balancing act to play. We have the speed at minus 100 in the wow. So we just talked about wow and speed. So it makes sense that this is slow because this is the bass sound. There are a couple of technical reasons, I guess I could mention, that did cross my mind, which was the one that would make the most like logical sense would be it causes a phase variation as the sound progresses, and that makes it so that certain sounds can come through easier or less easier at different moments in time. Here's, for example, take the kick or the snare. The kick drum hits, bass hits. If they hit with the same relationship, it's going to sound roughly the same. So if the kick's slightly muffled or if the kick's slightly above the bass, it's always going to be like that if you have like a static relationship, which is why part writing is so important. But if you were to cause some phasiness in one, there will be a different phase relationship with the kick. And so there will be moments where the kick will come out a bit above the bass. And this sometimes can be a really bad thing, and other times can be a really good thing. And in my case, I think it's a good thing. Sort of fits my sound that I've made here. So that's what's going on there. And then we also have color. This is just darkening it up. If we actually bring it to the bright side, that is really, really bright. And so I went for the darker sound. Actually, it might be worth automating this now that I listen to it in solo. Because at that moment where we go up into the high register, it'd be cool to have the high stuff. So that could be pretty cool. And then we've already talked about saturation, and the speed is just so that the wow does not get out of hand. And because if we had this up too much on a bass, will definitely be super noticeable. Here, you can't really notice it. It's a subtle thing for sure. And that is what's going on there. So that's Bad Tape. If you have any questions about this, let me know. Subscribe, hit that bell icon for future videos, and have a blessed day.